Hello, everyone. It's Wheezy here, and welcome to my corner of the internet. Woo, child! Who has recovered from seeing Harry and Meghan attend the One Love premiere in Jamaica? The British media's ongoing meltdown is epic and deliriously funny. Today, we're diving into another episode of our mind blowing journey exposing the Daily Mirror's phone hacking secrets, which are all tied up with the upcoming Daily Mail hacking case. Do you guys remember the news that came out about Murdoch's news group newspapers reaching a six-figure settlement with former Liberal Democrat MP Chris Huhne in December 2023? It seemed insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but the case was heavily played down for a reason. For my American audience, an MP is a member of the parliament, the American equivalent of a member of Congress. Although we're only in the last week of January 2024, honey, with all that has happened since the year started, it feels like it happened ages ago. It feels like December 2023 was 10 years ago. What do you guys think? Or is it just me? In their usual fashion, the media suppressed the news that Chris Huhne was not the only recipient of cash settlements from Murdoch's company. There were 11 other cases which were settled at the time, bringing the total amount which the Murdoch group of companies has paid out in settlement of unlawful intrusion cases to 1.2 billion. 1.2 billion, folks. How does that even happen? Now, let's get into the nitty gritty. We're about to unravel the Byline Times article, which spilled the beans on how Murdoch's company allegedly seized control of the UK government using phone hacking. The juicy details of the Murdoch Group coup were scooped from the excerpts of the Media Confidential podcast, hosted by none other than Alan Rushbridger, the former editor of the Guardian newspaper. He was the Guardian editor during the explosive 2011 phone hacking scandal that saw the news of the world being shut down. Allen had Nick Davies, the reporter who first broke the phone hacking story at News Group newspapers, on the podcast. Nick spilled the beans on the major settlement with Chris Huhne and dropped two strong bombshells. He said the court documents from the case revealed A. Murdoch's people kept hacking voicemails even after the news of the world shut down. Surprise, surprise. This is what the Leveson 2 inquiry was supposed to take care of, right? And he said, B, Murdoch's companies, known for hacking personal phones for editorial purposes, that is, for stories to publish in the papers, were allegedly involved in corporate espionage for Murdoch's commercial interests, even at the center of government level. I'm telling you guys, it was the wild, wild west out here. Nick also revealed that the court documents showed that the hacking instructions seemed to come from the top dogs at Rupert Murdoch's company, including Rupert Murdoch's son, James Murdoch. This means there is little or no room for plausible deniability. Despite the fact that there was no direct evidence of phone hacking in Chris Huhne's case, there was an overwhelming amount of circumstantial evidence like payments to private investigators and calls from Murdoch's company office to the phones of the MPs who took the legal action against Murdoch's companies. Those MPs were Chris Huhne, Vince Cable, and Norman Lamb. But hold on. How did they hold Murdoch's companies responsible without direct evidence of the phone hacking? After all, that's exactly what Piers Morgan has been saying. He has been saying that, as far as he can see, Prince Harry's case is not going to succeed because he has not been able to provide evidence against the Daily Mail, right? It turns out Murdoch's companies had a distinct modus operandi, and in this case, it involved a whopping 900 calls to the MP's phones over time. They took the form of suspiciously short phone calls to the target's phones. The targets all confirmed that they never received any phone calls from anyone at Murdoch's company. So, who was calling and why? The way phone hacking used to work in those days was that the person doing the hacking would call the number of the person being hacked to access their voicemail. The calls to access the target's voicemail were usually less than a minute or a little over a minute. In order to access the voicemail of the target, the phone hacker had to call the phone when the phone was not in use, which meant that they had to keep on calling to figure out when the target's phone was not busy. The duration of these calls was suspicious because if MPs were going to be taking calls from journalists, being that the calls were coming from Murdoch's company office, right? That call would be a complex call and would typically take the MP about 10 to 15 minutes to complete the call. Whereas in this case, the calls were less than a minute or a little over a minute each time. Now, combine these suspiciously short calls with private investigators' invoices and corresponding back payments in and out of the company account, and voila, an intriguing picture emerged. So, why did Murdoch go to all this trouble? What did he want from Huhne and the other MPs he targeted? We're going to break this down and so much more. But before we do, please be sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss out on any news regarding this case and so much more. Now, let's get back into it. There are three stages to this story. Here is the backstory to the first stage. So, in 2005 to 2006, Charles Kennedy, leader of the Liberal Democrats political party, faced alcohol related issues. He lost his leadership of the Liberal Democrats Party, and this loss triggered an election. During the election process, it was discovered that there was a corresponding frenzy of hiring private investigators by News of the World and The Sun, and about 900 calls from Murdoch Company's office to Charles Kennedy and his associates' phones with the same MO that we have discussed before, the suspiciously short phone calls and hiring private investigations, the private investigators' invoices, and the payments in and out of the company's accounts. Charles Kennedy says that he never received any phone calls from the Murdoch companies, which meant that the only reason why the calls were coming to his phone were that he was being hacked by Murdoch's companies. Two of Charles Kennedy's associates who were targets from that hacking, Simon Hughes on the left and Mark Outen on the right. I looked into the reason why both men were suing Murdoch's companies, and the tea is piping hot. But discussing their issues in this video would derail us from this already complicated story. So I'll just keep it moving. Maybe I'll come back to it in another video because it was that interesting. Anyway, as I was saying, Simon Hughes and Mark Otten settled their cases with Murdoch's company, and it's been accepted that they were hacked. The settlement of these cases implied that everything was good and everyone went about their business. Now, this was the first stage, and also known as the Charles Kennedy story and the election phone hacking. Okay. Everything seemed to settle down until Clive Goodman, the News of the World royal correspondent, got busted by the police in August 2006, 7 months after the election hacking. Now, what on earth happened with Clive Goodman that threw everything into chaos? We need to take a little detour into the Clive Goodman story to understand why Clive Goodman's police bust caused such problems for Murdoch. Ready? Okay, good. Now, Goodman was the scoop king at News of the World. He was breaking records for consecutive front page leads left and right. But his quest for inside information took a dark turn, hacking private phone messages, landing him a 4 month jail sentence. The suspicions began with a News of the World column in November 2005 revealing Prince William's knee injury and a postponed mountain rescue course known to very few. A week later, an item about Tom Bradby lending broadcasting equipment to the prince surfaced. This, by the way, is the same Tom Bradby who interviewed Prince Harry when he was doing the book promotion tour for Spare. So only a handful knew about it, including Bradbury, raising suspicions. The royal household reported the matter to the police. This led to them launching an inquiry led by Scotland Yard's counter-terrorism branch. Goodman and private investigator Glenn Mulcair were the prime suspects. This led to their arrest and guilty pleas on the 29th of November that year. Andrew Coulson, the News of the World's editor, promised that the News of the World would make charity donations to organizations chosen by the princes. Perhaps this was the donation of 1 million by Murdoch to William Earthshot Prize Foundation that Prince Harry had referred to in his phone hacking case. These guys, I'm talking about Goodman and the private investigator Mulcair, these guys made a whopping 609 calls to royal staff members' numbers to extract their voicemail messages. Goodman made 487 calls, Mulcair made 122. The News of the World paid Mulcair over £100,000 annually for his service. Records of this payment file included references to Harry and Chelsea, Ring a Bell, and Wills. That's kind of how Harry's case comes into this one. At the hearing, the News of the World promised to clean up their act and ensure that they stopped phone hacking practices in the company. Now, this would be the second major case of phone hacking which had come out about the News of the World into the public space after the Charles Kennedy and election phone hacking scandal. And this is the second stage of the backstory to the Chris Huhne case. Guys, you would think that any sane businessman would stop whatever he was doing, which was causing such problems in his business, right? No. The hacking was worse than we thought. Now, you might be wondering at this point, this is all nice to know, but how does this connect to Chris Huhne? And why does Prince Harry accuse the government of being the worst it has ever been? And how has Murdoch gotten away with such blatant phone hacking practices for so long? So many questions. Hold your horses as I answer those questions in my next video, where I'll be spilling the tea on the exact steps Murdoch took to silently overthrow the government. Let's say allegedly. The reckless abandon Murdoch operated with is shocking, y'all. I never would have guessed it. I told you all this is the media's version of the Wild Wild West, where anything seemed to go. I'll be continuing this story in my next video, which will come out next week. If you have any thoughts on the case so far, or there's something you know which you'd like to let me know about, let me have your comments in the comment section below. Until next time, this is Wheezy signing out for now. Stay fabulous and goodbye. Bye bye.